Hello, everyone. Hello, everyone on the stream. My name is Ryan Harter, and I'm excited to be back at Chicago Roboto. I work at Dropbox, and I am a local here. I come from all the way from the western suburbs. So really excited to make the trip in. Today, I'm going to be talking about custom design systems in Jetpack Compose. Show of hands, how many of you have heard of Jetpack Compose? Yeah? Oh, great turnout. Just to clarify, what I really want to talk about is custom design systems in Jetpack Compose UI, because there are a bunch of people that get real angry on the internet about that. So Jetpack Compose UI, we'll talk about it. For those of you at home or anybody here, if you want to follow along, these slides are available at ryans.link/roboto22. So you can download the slides and follow along there if you want. With that, let's talk about Compose UI. So if you've used Compose or if you've looked into it at all, you might know that Compose comes in several different packages. Specifically, today we're talking about Compose UI. Compose UI is one layer of what we use, and this artifact contains primitives for things like drawing, measurement, layout. These are like the really low-level stuff. So when I say layout here, I mean measuring and deciding where things are going to be. We're not talking about high-level list layout type of stuff. On top of the Compose UI artifact, we have Foundation, Compose Foundation. This adds higher level composables for things like layout, boxes, like that type of stuff. Lazy loading, so lazy lists, lazy rows, lazy columns, lazy rows, all that kind of stuff. Gesture handling, text, those kinds of higher level constructs. And what's important to note is that at this point between Foundation and Compose UI, everything here is design system agnostic. So as we all know, Google's recommended design system is Material. That's what they use. None of this knows anything about Material, doesn't care about Material design. For that, we have the Compose Material package. If you're making an app, you might only include Compose Material, and that's going to pull in these other transient dependencies under the hood. These all build on top of each other, and Compose Material is the only layer that actually adds the design system, the components, things like buttons, snack bars, all that kind of stuff, other stuff like that. Since this is a design system talk, we're going to start by focusing on Compose Material, and specifically the structure of Compose Material. If you're using Compose Material as your design system, your entry point is probably the Material theme. This is a composable that you wrap your everything in, and sort of attached to this Material theme are these token systems. The big ones are colors, typography, and shape. These are customizable endpoints for the Material theme. The other big piece is the components themselves. So button, text, surface, snack bar, all of that kind of stuff. These all, you wrap them in your Material theme, and they use values from the token systems to configure themselves. So I want to take a quick sidebar and talk about these token systems. If you haven't worked with design systems, design system tokens are sort of, this is not a Material thing, this is a generic thing. And the idea is, you might have heard terms like semantic tokens, semantic naming, like all of that kind of stuff. And what we mean there is we have this set of tokens. This is straight out of Material. This is the Material design token, color tokens, that is. And the idea is the token itself is basically the name. So in material design, in Figma, in iOS and web, you might refer to like the primary color or the primary variant color. That's the token. That's sort of the underlying unit that we talk about when we're dealing with design systems, platform agnostic. We have the same for typography. Instead of we use these sort of named values instead of saying, oh, you're going to have, for this title, it's going to be, I don't know, a 48-point font in such and such font and, italicized or bold, like whatever. We use these named values. And the idea is, outside of that, if we're referring to things just by their configuration or that kind of thing, then we're not really using a design system. The idea here is that we limit the set of tokens that we can use, and then we're able to refer to them throughout the project. And that way you need to update something, whatever it might be. It makes it really easy to do that. And the idea with the semantic naming is that all of these names, instead of being, I work at Dropbox, instead of the color being Dropbox blue, that we, I don't know, highlight colors with or make our background, our button backgrounds, that kind of thing. The idea with the semantic naming is things are named by their use, by what they are, because maybe in a partner app, we want to make the accent color, for instance, something other than blue. Dropbox blue would no longer make any sense. So we use semantic naming there. And that sort of covers design system tokens. So this model is sort of one conceptual model of how to think of material theme and the pieces of it and how things are structured. Another one, when we're thinking about material theming, is how does this fit in your app? All right. And so here we have an app, a very cool chat app with no letters, but that's fine. So if we break this down, here's our UI, and we can see in Compose, these are obviously broken up into a bunch of different composables. And when we're theming, we just wrap the whole thing in a material theme if we're using material theme. Material theme itself has these colors, typography, shape, these token systems. And so then what happens sort of functionally is when something like our top app bar needs to know how to style itself, it can just reach up into the theme in which it's contained. It can get out its color, its primary or surface, whatever that semantically named color is, and then it can use that. And the same goes kind of throughout the tree as we're composing our layout. So how does that work? This is sort of a bit of magic in Compose that I think is really important to understand when we talk about making our own themes and design systems. All of that is powered by composition locals. And so what is a composition local? I want to preface this. This is a conceptual model. This is not how it really works under the hood. But I think this is a really useful way to think about it that allows you to sort of understand how it works. So when Compose came out and people talked about Compose, you might hear that Compose is really about managing trees, right? And so what does that mean? Well, in our view, we have a root node. That's sort of the entry point when you set content or whatever. And then in there, that previous diagram of the screen, we had material theme. You might have a scaffold that sort of builds the structure of the screen. You have the top app bar, which has text and image button composables within it. You have your floating action button, which really has an image inside it as the icon. And then we've got our our content, which might just be a layout or a box, something like that. And then within there, we have a column that has a bunch of rows and text. So this is how our screen breaks down into a tree, which is what Compose can deal with. And so now, when we want to use our design system, we have different nodes, random nodes throughout this tree that need to understand things from the scope, from material theme. And so one sort of naive approach might be to have some sort of static somewhere so that these can just access the static and say, oh, give me this, but then we're shared mutable state, blah, 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 all of those bad things. That doesn't really work. We have a tree, and so what material theme does transparently to its users is it introduces something into this tree called a composition local provider. And the idea there is you have something sitting in the tree at some point in that tree which is able to provide things. In this case, it provides our token systems. And those token systems are the composition locals. And so what happens is when our top app bar needs to know what color do I need to be, what is within this, the scope of this composition, what is the accent color, the primary color, whatever that might be. It's able to actually navigate sort of just up through the tree, through the parents, until it can find a composition local provider that provides the color composition locals. All right, and that way, it's able to get its color and it's able to style itself. This is a really powerful system because you can have, we'll take a look at it later, but you can have like multiple composition local providers sort of interspersed throughout the tree that override each other and that kind of stuff that allows things like your top app bar to not need to understand the state of the rest of the system or to understand the state of the world or to, you don't have to worry about, feature A over here is updating some sort of style that feature B is going to conflict with. As I mentioned before, the big caveat here, this is a conceptual model. What really happens is the composer is actually like, running through this tree to compose things, and it sort of carries the composition locals along with it. Outside of the scope of this talk, this is just a way to think about it. So what you should do is you should go to Aida's talk at, what did I say, 4 p.m. What does recomposition mean to your app? And I don't know the details of her talk, but based on the title, I assume she's going to talk about the composer and this stuff. So, so you can find out more about it there. But that kind of brings us back to this, this model here. So we've talked about Material Compose, but what we're here to do is we're here to customize stuff. If you use Material, apps look, I don't know, a lot of people say apps look googly. At Dropbox, where I work, we have our own design system that is not Material design, so we want to customize things. And so what are the options for custom theming? Step one, we can just customize Material, which we'll go into. We can also extend Material. We can replace Material's token systems. And finally, we can just implement a fully custom design system. So we're going to go through these one by one. First step, customizing Material. I mentioned before sort of this, well, I've mentioned several models of how you can think about Material theming. This sort of structure where you have a theme, you have these token systems, and those are the customization parts for Material. So if you're going to use Material theming as is and Material components as is, which is a great option, you can use these color, typography, and shape token systems to customize it to your liking. It is impressive how flexible Material as a theme, as a design system is with just these token systems. So what does this look like? So here we have some code which I'm excited. It looks like you can see. But if we want to have our own custom theme that's going to customize material theme, this would be one way that we could do that. You'll notice that we have a my theme composable that just takes content lambda, which is itself composable. This allows you to just wrap whatever other composable stuff you want in your app. And in this customization approach, all that does is wrap material theme. That content lambda that I mentioned, we simply pass that down into that material theme. And from there, we're able to, in our case, we have, let's say, colors is like the thing that we want to customize. We can configure our own color, material color token systems based on light or dark, and then maybe we make some decisions. If the system's in dark theme, we provide the dark colors, otherwise the light. And then we can also have static things. Maybe we don't, whether you're in light or dark theme isn't going to make a difference for the shape of buttons and things like that. So we're able to simplify the use cases within the app by just statically setting these. At Dropbox, we do square components, shapes. So for some reason in material, you still have to use a rounded quarter shape with a rounded radius of 0. But here we are. So there's my not rounded corner shape, and we can just provide that. In this example here, we're not overriding typography. We're using default typography styles, but we have a custom theme. Now, when you want to use that, if you've ever done a Compose sample, you've probably seen this. You have some sort of entry point into your app. You call material theme there, and it does all of its magic. But all you need to do now is change that to my theme, and you get your customized version of material there. And then your app content goes in there. All right, so that was customizing material. So now let's take a look at how you can extend material. There are actually 2 ways to extend material. One of them, super duper simple. We just use Kotlin's extension functions. All right, and so those same token systems, you can just add your own extension functions to, or in this case, extension properties, to those token systems. And then you can access those wherever you access colors. So you can see here that we are adding snack bar action as a color, text field input or a card shape. And those are being added directly to the material token systems. One thing to point out here, this should be used sparingly if you do. If you have a few tokens that you want to add, that's great. You can't override tokens this way because of how functions are resolved. So this is only for adding things, and only if you just have a few to add. If you want to get into a little more full-fledged extending of the material theme, we can do that by providing our own colors. So in this case, we have extended colors. So just like the composition locals that material theme provides for colors, we can have extended colors. Material comes with primary and secondary. Let's say we want to add a tertiary. And then, of course, we need the matching on tertiary, because if you have a color for a surface, you need a color for stuff that goes on the surface. So we just make a data class here. Perhaps in Aida's talk, she'll talk about like immutable flags and that kind of stuff. It has to do with how Compose figures out if things have updated and whatnot. But we'll throw the immutable on there. That's outside the scope of this. And then this is where we get into making the composition locals. So for our extended colors, we're going to make a local extended colors, which is a static composition local. And then you give it a factory. How is it going to instantiate this for the first time? From there, this code block right here is very similar to our previously just customized material theme. It's a composable block that takes a lambda, and then here we instantiate whatever our default extended colors are for our theme. And then here's sort of the magic of this approach. We insert, I guess, a composition local provider into the Compose tree at this point, and we have that local extended colors composition local, which is providing our extended colors here. Inside there, it's super simple. We just wrap the material theme again. So now we're in a state where our app has access to all of the material theme stuff, and it also has access to all of our extended stuff. So what does this look like through Compose's eyes? This is sort of the diagram we looked at before of our hypothetical app and the Compose tree. And up here where the material theme is, I told you, behind the scenes, inserting that composition local provider to provide those tokens. All we're doing is we have our extended theme, which is inserting our own composition local provider that provides the extended colors. And so now what happens is from within our tree, we have some node, maybe this text we told, this text is for some important reason, it should be, it should use the tertiary color that we defined. So that's going to reach up through the Compose tree. It's going to hit that first composition local provider, the first parent one it can find. It's going to say, hey, I need a composition local provider for the extended colors. Well, that one from material theme doesn't provide it. So it sort of moves past that. I don't know where that picture. Oh, sorry. I'm moving backwards in slides because I'm pushing the up arrow trying to go up to that composition local provider. That's what's happening. There we go. Forward. When it doesn't find it in that composition local provider, it's going to go up, continue up the tree to the next parent until it finds what it needs and it's able to style itself appropriately. Again, that all, while it's a good conceptual model, it seems very wasteful. There's a lot of tree traversal and hierarchy climbing and all that kind of stuff. The way that it works in reality is not, so you don't have to worry about that. So that's the theme. The last thing for that is, and this is sort of a convenience mechanism, creating an object of our extended theme. We created the function for our extended theme that's composable. We can also create an object with the same name, which has a property on it that provides those colors. And that the line there where it says local extended colors.current, that is current is how you actually access, in this part of the Compose hierarchy, get me the current composition local provider for this value. And so that's a convenient, you can see in the comment, that is how you provide that sort of API where you can say anywhere in Compose, you can say extended theme.colors.tertiary. You can get values off of it. It looks static, but it's reading it out of the tree. When you want to use that, this is kind of where the extension approach, this is where we sort of see the limits of its usefulness. In this case, we have an extended button. This is our custom button that's going to be colored in special ways or something. It's wrapping a material button, and here we override some of the colors that we provide to read those from the extended theme. And so in my opinion, the extension approach, it works, again, if you have sort of like limited needs. If you want to override every button in your app with some sort of, like extended value, then then you're replacing a bunch of stuff anyway. So it kind of falls down there. Moving on, we talked about customizing, extending. We can replace material token systems. So to replace the token systems, what we do, let's say we have our custom theme. And in this case, let's say material has its token. It has primary on primary, secondary on secondary for colors. It has typography like H1, H2, like all that kind of stuff. Let's say our design system has different tokens altogether. If we want to replace those, we again make a custom theme that takes a content, and then we can instantiate these data classes that model our token systems, just like we wanted. And then what you'll notice here is this is similar to extending, where we create a composition local provider with colors, typography, and elevation composition local providers that are providing our custom values there. And then instead of wrapping material theme in this, we're just getting rid of material theme in this case, and we are passing our content there, as demonstrated by these handy animations. So the way that you might use this, and this is a suggestion straight out of the Android developer docs. This idea is this works if you want to use materials components like buttons, snack bars, all of that, but not their tokens. You would then make your custom button, which wraps material button, and then you would replace every single property on that material component that reaches into the theme with values that reach into your custom token systems instead. So this is an approach. It's a very verbose approach, though. The last piece here is implementing a fully custom design system. So this one, we've sort of moved through this hierarchy of complexity, and this one I think is worth talking about because it tends to be really intimidating. And so the idea here is we had this model where we have Compose builds on top of Foundation, which builds on top of Compose UI. And what if you just want to get rid of Compose material and you want to insert your theme here? So what does that look like? Well, in order to do that, it's important to understand what is it that Compose material is providing? What does it bring to the table? I mentioned before, it has its token systems, and then it has a whole boatload of components. A lot of these components seem like there are a lot of foundational stuff that maybe a framework used to provide, like buttons and text and all of that kind of stuff. And if you've ever, dived into the Android.view.view source file or the text view, God forbid, source file, you might see this and say, well, there's no way that I'm going to, for my design system, re-implement this. What Compose does, and the way that they've sort of broken up that hierarchy, though, is it's actually not as intimidating as it may seem. We've already sort of talked about how you can implement your own token systems, and that part is relatively straightforward. It's data classes or that kind of stuff. So that's not really the intimidating part. It's that half over there that's the intimidating part of this. What I want to do, though, is I want to look at something really specific here. Within this list, just the surface. Because this is something where if you understand how Surface works and how other things use Surface, this is something provided by Compose Material, the package. But that's something that sort of enables everything else. So If we dive into the surface, quick recap, if it's been a while since you've read the material docs, a surface is basically anything in material that shows a background and has colors and is supposed to be analogous to a physical surface in the real world. So it might be the background, you know, of a view or a sheet or a button or a snack bar, like anything like that. Stuff that you can put stuff on. So a surface, in its simplest part, it looks like this. This is sort of the simplest way to think about a surface. It is a composable that takes content. It has a composition local provider, which we looked at before, which in the case of a surface provides color and elevation. Surfaces can be, you know, elevated relative to each other, and a box. That's it. It's not really it. Don't copy this source code. It's not going to work. But conceptually, this is what it is. Box is something that's provided from the foundation layer that I told you about before. So that's not something from material that you need to know about. What material sort of adds to this very simplistic view of a surface is some default properties here. And this is sort of what makes this simple surface a material surface. We have things like shape and color. These come straight out of material design. You know, material things have shape. They have colors, and they have elevation. That's sort of the other important one from the design spec there. And you can see they're using the material theme.colorscheme.surface. That is a composition local that the material theme provides. The content color 4 is actually part of material theme, and it says take this color and get a content color for it. So if it's a primary color, it's on primary. Things for content that go on a primary color. From there, surface is going to calculate elevation. This is like not super important, but I kind of find it like kind of interesting. So, and I have the microphone, so I'm going to talk about it. Basically, I feel like this gets overlooked or taken for granted. But what's cool about the hierarchical nature of Compose is that, and the composition locals, is when you add a surface, you could say like a snack bar has 8 dp of elevation, right? Well, if that snack bar is showing up over something else that also has 8 dp of elevation, then it won't look elevated because they're at the same level. But with the composition locals, when you create a new surface, if you give it elevation, it's going to actually look not below the surface, but above the surface, and say what level of elevation are we at? Are we at 8 dp, 0 dp? 16 dp, whatever, and then it's going to add its elevation to that, which seems super simple, but in almost all of the other design systems that I've worked with that don't have this sort of composition local hierarchy, there is a surprising amount of legwork you have to do to sort of build a system like that that's not sort of tightly coupled to the rest of the system. So enough about elevation. We do that. That box that I showed you before, surface is going to add a modifier to it. And all that it's doing here is those customization properties that it got. Shadow comes from the elevation, border if you supply it, background color and shape. It also clips to that shape. That's kind of about it, right? It's pretty simple. We provided 4 properties of customization, and there they are. They're just a modifier on a box. That's it. So this code, if you could see it all, is that's the code you could copy and paste, or you could just go to cs.android.com, search for Surface, and you will find this. I copied and pasted it straight out of their code. That's a surface from material. So it's not super complex. It just kind of adds a few bits of style to a box. Now, if we look at some other elements like card, I mentioned before that surface is sort of the foundation of a lot of material compose components. A card looks like this. Go to cs.android.com, copy and paste the source code for a card. That's all it is. It's nothing but a surface with, excuse me, it's nothing but a surface with a few default values. So you can see under the hood, it's a surface. You always have to take in a modifier in case your consumers want to customize things. And the content that's going to be within the card, it passes that directly to the surface that it emits. And then it has default values. They're a little different than a surface's default values. For instance, a card has by default an elevation of 1 dp. It uses the medium size shape by default, and the surface color is its background. And all the card does is pass those directly to a surface. So all a card is a surface with some custom default values. That's it. One more to look at is button. That's something that sort of every design system has one if you want to interact with the design system. And all that is this. Again, not really this. This is the simplistic version. Effectively, a button is just a surface with a row and content in it. What material actually adds is a bunch of default properties that we saw. So, a button can have disabled or enabled state, and it can have, I already include the on-click listener there. Otherwise, you might recognize the elevation, shape, border, colors. That's similar to the surface. It takes those, we get our content colors, and we just pass a bunch of that stuff to surface. This is a slightly different extension to the simple surface I showed you before, which this variant of surface just handles clicks, which is just a modifier that it passes. And then inside there, we have a composition local provider again. And that's just providing alpha because buttons can have their own custom alpha. We provide a text style for buttons. This comes straight out of the material theme. And provide text style here is just a fancy wrapper around a composition local provider. And then our content, we give some default button sizing and alignment. And that's it. That's the button. If you've ever dove into the android.view.button source, you'll find that one's actually really simple because all it is a text view. But that just lands you right back in the text view source, which you never want to be in. So, that doesn't help. So that's, there's a few examples of some of the components and how Material Compose is structured with sort of this surface foundation and then stuff on top of it that basically everything builds on surface. I did not, I'm watching the time and I'm getting low. I didn't do it for this, but again, if you've ever had the misfortune of being in the text view source, you might be scared off by, the idea of re-implementing Material Compose's text composable. While I don't have it here, I encourage you to go to cs.android.com and check it out because it is literally nothing. It's the basic text is provided by the foundation library, not the material library. All the material text component is a wrapper around basic text from foundation that pulls things like color, alpha, that kind of stuff from the theme. That's all it is. So you can use basic text if you want. It's really, really simple. So in less than 6 minutes, I want to talk about just like what we have chosen to do in this customization approach at Dropbox. So I joined Dropbox in January. We have our own design system, and these are some of like the actual, documentation for it. We have a design system team of designers, and we also have like a design system engineering team of React developers. We also do mobile. We're a web company by our sort of origin. So our design system is implemented in React and everything. It's for a long time it didn't sort of have like a dedicated team or that kind of stuff on mobile. So where we started, we already have a design system with our own token systems, color, typography, and our own components. It's sort of similar to Material in a lot of ways, but it's not the same. We have different tokens, a lot of the same components. You can't really have a design system without buttons and things like that. So when I joined, one of my tasks was to implement design systems for Android and see what needs doing and help with that. So the goals there, I wanted to be able to get started really fast. I didn't want to have to spend 9 to 12 months developing like the implementation of this design system before people could use it. I wanted it to be easy to use, and I put no cheat sheet there because this, nightmare I had was like this idea that you have to have like a cheat sheet pasted up by your monitor that says like, okay, when my designer gives me something that says like use the title large, that means H1 in Material, right? Like we didn't want engineers to have to do that kind of like translation stuff. In order to get started fast, I wanted engineers to have access to all of the existing Material composables, because there's a big library of composables there. And I also was hoping that our engineering teams, the product engineers, were really excited about Compose. They wanted to get started. So I wanted a system in which they were able to use Compose, like, again, before the design system is done, like while we're doing that. But some sort of escape hatch to be able to sort of incrementally migrate away from Material to our custom stuff. This is sort of the bullet points of approaches for customizing Material theme from before. And what I sort of came up with, it's not that novel, as you'll see, was a different approach allowing you to wrap Material. So it's sort of between extend Material and replacing Material. And the big thing here is similar to replacing Materials token systems. We have our own colors. These are, it might look like Material because we have primary and secondary, but they mean different things than Materials primary and secondary, which gets real confusing. But we've got our own like color tokens. But the extra step here that sort of makes this interactable without a lot of overhead with all of Materials components is this special little function. So effectively, we can make decisions about how to translate our token system into like a default set that's usable by the Material components. So for 80% of cases, this sort of translation where our Materials primary, I told you it was confusing. Materials primary color is what we call accent. And our background color is our standard background. Our on primary or secondary is standard text. Like we kind of do this translation for you. The same thing with typography. This is what our tokens look like. We can translate those into Materials. And then our design system is called DIG, Dropbox Interface Guidelines. So we have this DIG theme, which takes in these the component systems, or the token systems rather, and it'll use default values there. However, we have some different properties that might want to customize this, so we take those in the content. We set up our own composition local providers, and we wrap the material theme. However, we pass to the material theme our sort of translation of whatever was given to me. We pass that down in, and then pass the content along as well. And that is, by and large, that's our entire theme composable. So what does this mean? When you want to use it, just like material theme, you wrap stuff in your dig theme, and you can use all of the material components within a dig theme, and they will all be dig styled. I mentioned we do square shapes, there are colors and all of that. And so our feature engineers, they don't have to sort of remember like, oh, for our primary button, we have to use what we call accent, what material might call primary, for that kind of stuff. And then I'm just about at time, so I will go a little fast here. I mentioned I wanted that escape hatch, the way, an ability to sort of migrate away from material compose. Part of the reason for that is that like not all material components perform like we expect. For instance, in materials design system, the top app bar uses the accent color for the background, whereas we use the surface color, which is white in a light screen. And we can mitigate that by creating custom composables. However, that presents this problem to feature engineers of like, they know, oh, I use the nav bar, top thing is called a top app bar in Compose. So they go use that because material Compose is still on the class path, and they don't, maybe don't realize that they're supposed to use something else. So material has, all of these components, and the goal is that with this approach of translating our design system tokens into material, we can sort of migrate away from these one at a time, and then over time, while engineers are still using it, and it's hopefully relatively transparent to them, and then our dig for Compose dependencies go from looking like this to looking like this. We might still use material under the hood, but we can hide that from our feature engineers so they don't have to worry about it. Lastly, where are we at with all of this? It's sort of a bit of exploration. I've done a lot of talking with people at Twitter and Google and different teams. Compose is new. Everybody's figuring this out. So this is sort of what I see as the approach here. So we implement the theme so people have something to use. Then we have a chance to audit the components, figure out, like that top app bar, which ones work just a little bit differently, than we are. And then we'll be able to remove material from the API of this. And right now, where we're at, we're sort of, the theme's been implemented, we're using it in production and all of that. We're kind of in the auditing of components at this point. So we're not quite at the removing material, but we're getting there. Lastly, because this is a conference talk and this is what we do, if you want to come work with me, we are hiring at Dropbox, dropbox.com/jobs, I think, probably. Anyway, that's custom design systems in Jetpack Compose UI. Thank you.